Greetings, traveler. Have you ever felt that going to school was completely pointless? Specifically in terms of education and how much more knowledge you manage to retain after going there? At least it has been my experience that school has completely failed society in its role to educate, but I think there's something that actually can save society in that sense, and that's what I want to talk about today. My name is Xanthos. I've been working in the games industry for over 10 years now, and ever since I was a kid, the common opinion in society was that games are a waste of time. I should be doing something else like studying. So, having done that, now that I'm old and maybe not so wise, I realize that I don't remember anything from school. I don't remember any of the history that we learned. I don't remember chemistry, physics, literature, nothing. I still remember how to do addition, multiplication, and so on. But that's it. That's all I remember. But I learned that at what, first or second grade. It didn't really take so much time to learn it. In university as well, we had all these courses and all these topics that we studied. I remember nothing. I really have no memory of it. Somehow I passed the tests, but after passing the test, the Zeigarnik effect kicks in. And if you don't know what that is, it's that effect that they noticed about waiters in restaurants, where if a waiter has an unfulfilled order in a table, the waiter can remember it perfectly. But once that order is fulfilled, the waiter completely wipes it off their mind, and they cannot even remember who ordered or what it was or the general details of it. As long as that open loop is there, you remember it, but once the loop is closed, the brain thinks it's not useful anymore and completely wipes the information off. So I think that's a problem. I think that's a huge problem. We spend so much time in these institutions, but we come out with basically nothing. And the reason why I say we is because no matter how many people I discuss this topic with, almost all of them feel the same way. They don't feel that they remember anything at all they learned at school. Conversely, when I was playing video games, sometimes I had to look up something academic that had to do with the game. So for example, the game would offer me 3 different swords to upgrade the current one I was using in the game, and all the swords had different stats. So like one had more base damage, the other had less base damage but more critical, the other had not so much base damage, not so much critical, but lots of elemental damage. And I thought, well, which one should I choose then? How do I create a criterion for choosing between these 3 swords? So that led me to reopen my statistics books, and because those were horribly written as well, I looked up online how to do statistics and averages and factor in the critical probability and how do you normalize it over many hits and so on. So when I had that use case to seek knowledge, it was a real pleasure learning about that topic. And basically I had the same experience with everything else. I studied because of a game rather than because of school. In school, my standard experience at least, and I know there's cool schools out there who have alternative systems and so on, I know, but I'm talking about the classic school experience where essentially you go to class, there's a topic like math or literature or whatever, and the teacher says, this is what we're doing today, explains the concept, you do a couple of exercises in class, gives you some homework, and then the next day you're supposed to remember everything that was taught the previous day, you're supposed to know how to solve the exercises, and at the end of the term, there's going to be a big test that you have to pass. And that's where school essentially enforces the Zeigarnik effect with full force, which is the most counterproductive thing I've ever heard. So where does that leave us? And how can, first of all, how does this affect society, and how can games help here? I think it affects society in a major way because according to a research that was done a few years ago, about 75% of all people working, I think it was in the United States, are disconnected from the work. What does that mean? It means that they don't care about it. They do not see any point in doing the work. They're there purely for the money. They don't see it as an activity that can help them grow. learn things, discover life, discover themselves, discover things they want to do, find out how they can improve the world, find out how their work affects the world and gives meaning to their lives. All these things you could possibly get from working in a place or learning a new skill. So that 75% of people did not get that. They were there purely for the money, and I don't think this is a very hard point to sell, because think about all the people you know and how much they enjoy the work they do. At least for me, it's almost everyone hates their work. They would rather not do it, and they think the money they get for it is not enough for the pain that experience causes them. And I was thinking that is extremely similar to my experience at school. So there you don't even get money. You have the threat that if you don't learn this topic that some adult is telling you to learn, you won't be able to pass the grade, you won't be able to find a job in the future, you'll have to repeat the course. Basically punishment all the way. If you do well in a test, it doesn't mean anything, because those intermittent tests, they don't matter in terms of how well you do. You just have to pass them. So there's no reward, there's just the prevention of a penalty, essentially a punishment that you get with that. So since our society, through this traditional education system, enforces this model so strongly, everybody has to go through this model, essentially. Perhaps it's no surprise that humans grow up to be resentful of their work, of school, of having to do something for money, and so on. In stark contrast, when people play video games, nobody ever complains about, oh, to play this video game I had to learn how to use a controller, or I had to learn how to do a backflip in the game, or a combo or something. Nobody ever complains about that. If they don't want to do it, they don't do it. And if they feel that there's a benefit to learning a new mechanic or a new skill for a game, then they slowly learn it and they reap the benefits of that. But no one told them to do it. No adult or other force came and said, listen, now you have to play video games. We do it because we want to. It's fun. It's harder than school. Video games are typically harder than your daily job. But we do it because we want to. And think about that for a moment. So when somebody asks you to do something simple and pays you to do it, you really don't want to do that, which sounds absurd, but that's life for most people. But when you have the freedom to do whatever you want, you may sit down and play a video game that is more difficult, more demanding on your brain function. It requires often a time commitment of some sort. It offers a challenge that you have to solve, while your daily life might offer no challenges whatsoever. And yet, we'd rather do that than work and get paid. I think this has a profound effect on how we think about society and human motivation. And I think it's very hopeful, showing us that perhaps the way we've been doing education up to now doesn't have to fail society in such a horrible degree. Maybe if we learn from the way people play video games, where you're in an interesting space, you see something cool out there, you want to get involved with that, or you want to learn more, there is a way for you to learn more upon demand. So first you get the motivation to learn something, and then you satisfy that motivation by achieving that learning part, and then you get the reward. And because this is a good feeling, of course you want to get as much of that as possible. And if you do it enough times, then it becomes your comfort zone. So it becomes easy to challenge yourself a little bit, get that reward, feel good about it, challenge yourself more, get a bigger reward, and so on. And also, the way we do learning in games is relevant. So the game, when it teaches you something that you want to learn, or that is going to be useful to you and you're interested in that, and you learn it, there's a very good feeling associated with that. And if a game was to teach you something irrelevant, you'd think that's strange and you probably wouldn't engage with that content very much. So these are my thoughts on this topic. I personally had a horrible experience going through all of these education institutions. And looking back at my life up to now, I realized that I learned so much more from getting the motivation from video games, or finding the cool things I can do in video games, and how that would be enhanced by learning any of the typical knowledge fields like math, science, or literature, and so on, than simply studying it because somebody told me to study it. So that's some food for thought. It has been very much so for me, and how I design my games. And if you know someone who is also interested in the interaction between education and gaming, perhaps share with them, and let me know their thoughts. Anyway, that's it for today. Thank you for your time, and as always, have fun.